I have killed hundreds of bosses in my years of gaming, but these 10 are my Hall of Fame. You guys have been asking for this, so let's get into it. And I know long intros are annoying, but there is a few things we have to get out of the way. First off, this is for Souls games or games similar to them, but I'm not here to debate what is or isn't a Souls-like game. So if you're going to get bent out of shape when you see Black Myth Wukong is going to be in this video, just chill out, man. This is supposed to be fun. Second, I've not played every single video game out there. For example, Stellar Blade is another Souls-like adjacent sort of game that has amazing boss fights, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. And lastly, this list is just my opinion. It's not some official ranking. I've got my own biases and weird preferences just like anyone else, but I'll try to explain my picks so that they make sense. Okay, that's it. Let's get into number 10. Beginning the boss fight Hall of Fame is Baal the Dread from Elden Ring. Baal the Dread is a ferocious dragon that is found in the Elden Ring DLC Shadow of the Erdtree after pushing through the raging storms of Jagged Peak. That build-up is just the beginning of what makes Baal special, but this fight is all about the visuals. Because I've been on record before, almost every content creator in this space is smarter than me when it comes to knowing how these games work. For me, it's just hard to care about any of that when I'm seeing an enormous fire-breathing dragon do all the things you see Baal do throughout his boss fight. If I had to pick just one as his best, it's the iconic phase transition. But I think top to bottom, every attack just looks so damn cool, and you can feel Baal's anger behind every attack. And this is what's going to land Baal here in the Hall of Fame. Because when I talk visuals and just how everything looks, Baal is the best I've ever seen in a Souls game. And yes, that matters. Obviously, there's more to a boss fight than only presentation, though. The boss's moveset and difficulty matter just as much. So how does Baal stack up there? Well, did you forget this is the Hall of Fame we're talking about? Baal is extremely mobile and moves around the arena like crazy, but when you do get your hits in, it's almost always on his head. From Software did this with Midir in Dark Souls 3, and it's crazy they don't do this with just every dragon fight. Fighting dragons and hitting the head lets us see all their cinematic dragon stuff they do, but we still fight them as if they're a humanoid type of boss. It feels much smoother than fighting other dragons where usually we whack away at their ankles and don't get to see anything. As for his difficulty, yes, Baal is extremely hard. However, I would say he's not always the most fair. For one, he can get really aggressive as the fight continues. I'm not sure if the game is trying to make you see he's getting angrier and angrier, but really it just gives less of a chance to ever get a hit in and have a lot of downtime. I can think of a few specific times I've gone up to a whole minute without being able to get a hit on him while he flies from one side of the arena to the other like a lunatic. There are also some odd hitboxes on his breath attacks. And lastly, his health pool is a bit ludicrous. Even if I do like his moveset most of the time, if the fight does go on long enough, depending on how it plays out of course, can get a bit old. But these are very minor gripes and I'm mostly nitpicking. It's hard to care about all that stuff when Baal does other things so well. I'm just explaining why he isn't any higher. If I wanted to show an alien who has never seen a video game before what playing them looks like in this day and age, I would show them Baal the Dread. The visuals are the best in Souls, and the gameplay is there to back it up. Although, I would say that the gameplay is the weakest on this list by a pretty fair bit. Allfather is one of the best bosses in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice and one of the best bosses ever made. For one, I never have gotten to beat up my dad in real life, so this is as close as I can get, and two is how replayable Allfather is. I actually just ranked the Sekiro bosses a week ago on my channel, by the way. Check it out after this if you'd like, but I'm gonna be honest, I had completely forgotten not only how fun Allfather is, but while I was getting footage and refreshing my memory on every single boss, I was shocked at how I've underrated this dude over the years. In my head, this encounter had always been on par with the first time we fight him, Great Shinobi Owl. Just a bit harder because it's fought at a faster pace. But that is just not the case at all. Allfather has a few huge differences. He doesn't fight as dirty here as he does in the other fight where he can stop your healing and throw poison on the ground, shit like that. He also is much faster and mobile in our rematch here, which adds to the challenge. This is now a faster, more straightforward sword fight. And listen, some of this may be common knowledge. So if you want some insight, it's because I don't have Inner Father unlocked anymore because I used to play this on PlayStation years ago and I don't have it now. So until these past few weeks, I've always avoided fighting Father Owl if I'm doing some refights. I miss being able to do Inner Father, and it's been years. I also don't think I ever beat him when I did have that. So anyway, me rambling here is to say Allfather can definitely move up in the future. I also need to apologize for not giving him his due in the past. Regardless, Father Owl has some variations on his attacks that make him feel so unpredictable compared to most of the fights in this game. I think my favorite example is how when he charges up his heavy overhead attack, he can change what he's going to do based on what you do. So for example, here I went to his side and he unleashed a huge wide sweep to try and get me with. Allfather is a very intelligent boss with his mix-ups, and they make him very replayable. Don't be surprised if next year when we do this, he skyrockets up the rankings once I have the inner version unlocked again. But as it stands now, this is a Hall of Fame fight that I've been sleeping on. Arlecchino the Blood Artist is the hardest boss fight I have ever done. Lies of P has tight parry timings compared to other games, and if you've never played Lies of P, do me a favor. Look at the screen right now. You see these combos? Yeah, brother, this is the warm-up. You actually have to focus on not getting a hit at all here. Because if you do, you'll probably get input read and get put in a cycle of pain and torment when you're trying to heal and keep getting hit. Yeah, he can tell when you heal and attack you instantly. It's brutal. This fight is all about Phase 2. It starts out like this. I never cried about Malenia again once I spent my entire weekend learning to survive that combo. The rest of the encounter, he has saws and swipes at you with fiery claws and can kill you with the break status effect on top of all of that. There's no one single thing that stands out as to why I love this fight. I think when you put everything together, it combines for a downright ridiculous challenge, but nothing on its own is unfair. The closest to unfair is the phase transition move, but you will only see it 2 times per fight at most. I don't think I ever got Arlecchino down. My winning attempt, everything went right and I took him down, but whenever I think of Arlecchino, the main thing that comes to mind is how I spent an entire weekend trying to beat him, never got mad once, and when I finally did, it was the best sense of accomplishment I ever had since getting a fire cape in RuneScape's Fight Caves in 2006. I felt like a kid again. It's hard for bosses to give you that feeling of beating your ass and you love every second of it, and Arlecchino did just that. Even if I don't have any strong feelings about his moveset as a whole, the total package put him instantly in the Hall of Fame. Great Sage is the final boss of Black Myth Wukong, and he uses all of the abilities that we use as the player to kill all of these powerful bosses. The Great Sage's Broken Shell uses these powers for a very different reason. He uses them to mog the player. He basically just spends half the fight emasculating you and not taking you seriously. For example, throughout the game, a popular spell freezes enemies in place. Occasionally, when you go to heal, Great Sage will freeze you in place, take a sip of your Estus flask, unfreeze you, and toss it back. Because it's the final boss of the game, it's not always funny. Like, it doesn't break the tension somehow, which is what I'm saying. That had to be a hard bounce for them to find, but they did do it. It's more of a shock moment. Most of Black Myth Wukong, I found myself cringing at all the talking animals, and I was completely turned off by the story. But this was the only time I got really into it. Seeing the Great Sage stretch with the sunset at his back as the music crescendos and you brace for a phase 2 had me a bit emotional, knowing that the journey was coming to an end. Does the gameplay hold up here? Unlike with Bale, Great Sage manages to have that awesome presentation, but he is more than backed up by his gameplay that manages to be even better. This is as good as it gets and is the real strength of the fight. Listen guys, I know you come to a Shawnee Salami video more for vibes over and analyzing a moveset crazy in depth, and I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, so I get it. So I'll put it this way, but he's bigger than you, he's stronger than you, and his spells are just stronger versions of the ones we've been using to this point. It comes down to you to be the difference, and it gives you this whole feeling of really earning the win here. If there is one downside, it's that I think a lot of his attacks have to be memorized. You can't really react to all of them without having seen them before. That's not uncommon for bosses to have these sorts of moves, but I feel like these attacks were used a bit too much where I had to memorize the timings rather than read and react to them. In the end though, I'm 31, so it could be a skill issue. I am pretty washed. But what a fight. And by the way, if you are enjoying this video, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe for my future content. But back to the video.
I am Malenia, Blade of Miquella. And I have never known defeat.
Malenia was all over the promotional material for Elden Ring, going back to the very first reveal for the game in 2019. She was basically the poster child for the game at a time when we didn't know much about it besides the fact that this was an open-world Souls game. Players were excited to finally face her, and when they did, she instantly became legendary for her difficulty and was being crowned the hardest boss From Software had ever made. She attacked like lightning with her katana, healed herself every single time she hit you, and came complete with the most ridiculous attack From Software had ever made. Waterfowl Dance. I always thought this was too much for the average player to deal with, and I hated her for years. Even after beating her countless times, I stuck by that opinion for a very long time. But shout out Cheetah Man in my Discord for changing how I thought about Malenia in one sentence. Malenia is not a boss that was made for the average player. And think about it. Malenia is an optional boss at the end of an enormous game, and From Software clearly designed her to be one of the ultimate challenges for the players who want to push themselves as far as they possibly can. She doesn't have to be fair, and if you did beat her, you're not an average player either, because regardless of how you did it, you learned how because you love these games that wouldn't take defeat as an option. And regardless of her difficulty, Malenia is just a downright amazing boss fight. Outside of Waterfowler, her moveset is very fun to fight against, with each attack having a pretty clear tell, and she has very fair punish windows. If you use a strength build like I almost always do, you can stagger her easily as well, which makes the fight play out differently than a lot of these late game bosses. Phase 2, she becomes the Goddess of Rot in a cutscene that is as grotesque as it is beautiful looking. You're fighting a god at the peak of her powers, and this is one of those few boss fights that truly feels like it. From Software knew they had something special with Malenia, and over the years, I and many other fans that hated her initially have really just come to love this fight. We're eating crow. She is one of gaming's greatest bosses of all time, earning her spot in the Hall of Fame at number 6. And at number 5, we have Genichiro Ashina. Sekiro was so insanely different compared to every From Software game to this point. It plays in a lot of ways the exact opposite of the Dark Souls trilogy and Bloodborne. Instead of playing defensively and dodge rolling, now it's time to press the attack and deflect, and deflect again. From Software taught us how to play this new style of combat the only way they knew how, by beating our ass into the dirt over and over and over in the form of the game's skill check. Genichiro Ashina. If you refuse to deflect and focus on dodging, this is where your journey ends. You simply are not going to get past Genichiro unless you learn how to parry. And if you don't want to be aggressive and you don't want to press your rhythm of attacks on the boss, Genichiro is going to Boromir you with his bow every time you back up. This whole thing is brilliant, but its genius doesn't stop at teaching you the game's mechanics. Genichiro is Wolf's rival, and in your fights with him, you can see how you progress as a player, as well as Wolf is progressing as a fighter in his duels with Genichiro. The first time you meet him, Wolf is in a sorry state, and you don't know how to play yet. Genichiro dog walks you. The second time, the fight we were talking about here at the top of Ashina Castle, Wolf is more himself, and it is a showdown for the ages. This is where you're starting to learn the game. The third time you meet him at the end of the game, you've mastered Sekiro's combat. Wolf is in his total prime and has a mortal blade. You beat him easily. Storytelling and gameplay working in tandem like that is one of my favorite things games can do, and I can't think of any better or well-told examples as good as this one. And let's not forget, this is the dude who left us humiliated in the introduction level to the game. I talked about this in my recent Sekiro ranking, but the cutscene before the start of the fight got me so irrationally hyped the first time I saw it. If you saw me, you probably thought I was about to get into a real life fight. It is unbelievably hype, and the gameplay lives up to it as a skill check like I mentioned. And on top of all of that, he has an inner version that makes him stay reasonably difficult instead of being a pushover like other early game bosses. Genichiro is the perfect early game skill check to teach you the mechanics of a game, but he also has all the makings and feelings of his final boss despite being so early on. So even if he is significantly easier than every boss in this Hall of Fame, he places fifth regardless. Amazing character, amazing storytelling, amazing gameplay, amazing everything. He is the total package. But what about a different boss that's also the total package, but has the difficulty of these top bosses on top of that? Well, my friend, that would be Messmer the Impaler. Messmer was seen as the main villain leading up to the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, and that DLC was just loaded with some of From Software's best fights of all time, but none are better than Messmer, who excels at every single aspect of a good boss fight. I mentioned earlier that presentation, gameplay, and difficulty, which also includes fairness, are the things that make up a boss. So let's break that down a bit further. Messmer has some of the best and most tragic lore in From Software's catalog. His design is sick, and his OST is top tier. If we talk gameplay, how many bosses across the From Software catalog realistically have a moveset as fun to fight as Messmer's, in either phase? There are probably less than 5. He also is one of the hardest bosses in Elden Ring, but not a single move in his arsenal feels unfair. The pace of this fight is excellent. It's a back and forth duel where it's clear where you can attack and when Messmer can attack. Essentially, I just think the flow of this boss is perfect and unrivaled across From Software's games. What hasn't already been said about how great Messmer is as a boss fight? Well, I do think there's one thing, because I don't think this is brought up enough, and I think other content creators are justifiably afraid for their lives for them and their loved ones if you dare say a certain 10-year-old boss plays like he's showing his age 10 years later. That should not be a hot take. Okay, I'll just say it more clearly. Messmer destroys. He just mogs Slave Knight Gale, Artorias, and all of those fights I still love, but it's not 2017 anymore. So Gale's not on this list. Messmer is the new gold standard when it comes to the Souls formula of combat. but that doesn't make him the best From Software boss fight. That's going to go to Sword Saint Ishin, who comes in at number 3. The final boss of Sekiro is Sword Saint Ishin. The greatest swordsman to ever live in this fictional version of Japan is here, back from the dead and in his prime. Prepare for the fight of your life. As a self-proclaimed FromSoft glazer, I genuinely think this is the greatest boss they have made to date. As a YouTuber, I really try and find things that aren't always said and come up with fresh angles while still being true to myself. Basically, I don't like repeating the same tired takes. For example, in Genichio's entry, I tried to talk about how hype it made me feel and didn't mention the details about Wolf unsheathing his sword quicker with each encounter. But man, when it comes to Ishin, what hasn't been said? This is a boss fight that when people talk about him, it always sounds like a hyperbole with the praise he gets, but it's actually completely justified. So yes, he is the ultimate test of everything you learned. Yes, he is the best final boss in From Software history, and yes, this is crazy levels of difficulty without ever feeling unfair. Sword Saint Ishin has the best original soundtrack and arena in the game. I feel like I'm just listing off compliment after compliment. These last 4 bosses really are that flawless. If I do have one issue, it's that he's called the Sword Saint, and the only phase that he uses his sword is a warm-up for his true fight where he uses a spear in phase 2 and 3. I would have loved the true katana duel to be the final boss fight, but wait, that's fixed in the inner version where stage 1 becomes just as crazy as phases 2 and 3. Ishin is everything you've heard and more, and Elden Ring is my favorite game of all time. I wanted to put Mesmer ahead of Ishin because of this, but after replaying Ishin and Inner Ishin a ton for my recent Sekiro ranking, I just can't deny how flawless Ishin is. While replaying every boss for footage and to remind myself, I just kept wanting to fight Ishin instead of fighting everyone else. It's like returning to an old friend every single time, but you also beat the shit out of each other every single time you see each other. But of course, we have 2 more to go. And Erlang the Sacred Divinity comes in at number 2. He is the optional super boss of Black Myth Wukong. He's basically the game's Malenia, and quite frankly, I'm not sure how this guy exists. I swear to God, I think years from now, we're going to see a controversy with Game Science where they were using Black Myth Wukong as an excuse to test some Chinese AI bullshit in a video game. This will definitely be a controversy years from now. Book it. This boss is so fucking smart with how it reacts to everything the player does. It's just like unlike anything I've seen in a boss fight I've ever played. Essentially, it comes down to him having so many variations to his attacks that you simply will not memorize it. You have to hit him during his combos, so you are simultaneously on the offense and the defense at the same time all the time. There's just no other boss fight that does this. Ever since I started my content creator journey, I've tried not to watch Souls content to cloud my judgment or influence my own thoughts. Basically, I try to be unapologetically me, even if I have the most dog shit take on earth, it will be a genuine one. All is that to say, the one exception to my rule is my personal GOAT Magic Hat. I've never talked to the dude, I'm just a fan. But regardless, he had a video basically breaking down why Erlang is the best boss fight of all time. Black Myth Wukong is a game I had no interest in playing, but this convinced me to give it a go. It was a so-so game, but I could never bring myself to uninstall Black Myth Wukong and all 125 gigabytes it takes up on my PC because of how much I adore refighting a few of the top bosses, but 90% of the time that goes to Erlang. There's just not any boss like this out there. I swear to God, it's Chinese AI at work. Erlang's boss is so insanely smart, it feels more like a PvP encounter with a human-controlled player, but with a boss's health bar. It's an unreal battle. But we have one more boss to go. First, let's do some honorable mentions that I was too lazy to get footage for. We're just gonna rattle them off while I fight Erlang here. Wu Chang Fallen Feathers had one of my favorite boss lineups as a whole, but no standout Hall of Famers. Vermilion Feathers, Bow Sorcerer, and the Eternal Glory just missed the cut. As for other From Software games, I have not been able to replay Bloodborne in almost 4 years at this point, but Lady Maria and Often of Cost are fantastic fights. I don't think if any of the Dark Souls 3 bosses made it here, a game I still do replay decently often, and when I did have both, I preferred the fights of Dark Souls 3, I would guess they wouldn't make it. As for Dark Souls 3, Slave Knight Gale and Soul of Cinder are 2 standouts. Elden Ring and Sekiro are 2 games that received enough glaze on this ranking. Just check out those videos I did of their bosses top to bottom if you want to see how I feel about all of the fights. And from the first Berserker Kazan, realistically, Reese was the closest to the Hall of Fame, but she's just too easy of a fight to make it. Maluka was also considered, but he didn't make it. First Berserker Kazan has some truly incredible fights, including our number 1. And number 1 is Ozma from the first Berserker Kazan. This is open and shut the best boss fight I've ever done. When I made this list, the easiest call was that Ozma would be number 1. Kazan had the best combat the Souls genre has to offer, and the boss fights got the most out of it. They're phenomenal top to bottom. but I am not exaggerating when I say Ozma is somehow a stratosphere ahead of the rest of the bosses in Kazan. The fight kicks off with Ozma as a mage, floating around the arena sending spells at you from range and casting area denial on the ground to keep you moving. Kazan had a ton of these spellcaster fights, and while seemingly every other Souls game has been struggling to make these kinds of fight work, Kazan had 4 excellent ones already before this, and yet this Phase 1 is so much better than all 4 of the others. He has a seemingly endless amount of attacks in Phase 1, yet somehow, someway, this ain't even shit compared to Phase 2, where Ozma becomes a melee fighter and does not carry a single attack over from his already seemingly endless bag of tricks from Phase 1. It's just outrageous the amount of things that are being thrown at you here. I can't even begin to think about how many attacks he has. And I guess it's not just me, because I could not even find an accurate number online. This is tough, and you are going to struggle to hang on through one of the hardest and longest fights in the genre. But when you finally land the killing blow, you are greeted with a 3rd phase. I could not believe my eyes when I saw this. My jaw dropped. There was just no way they were doing this to me. After a few attempts, I did come to realize it was the easiest phase, but that's easier said than done. Your healing is at its lowest. Every time I got to this Phase 3, my heart would race, because if you die here, it's obviously back to the start. And I'm not exaggerating. This fight can go over 10 minutes. Getting this far and going back toward the beginning was always a heartbreaker, but it made it all the more worth it when I finally brought Ozma down. The high of this boss fight is something I've been chasing ever since. It's overwhelming but a total blast at the same time, because there's no single attack out of the 10 billion of them that he seems to have that ever felt unfair. It's one of only 2 boss fights in the game where the story really added a lot to the stakes of the fight as well. Ozma lost everything in the world, and the one person he thought would still be in his corner was Kazan. He thought you would join him after all that you guys had suffered. Long story short, Kazan's overall story did not do it for me, but Ozma's absolutely did, and added a lot of emotions to the fight as well, which is also helped even more by the spectacular OST. He may be a bit overly edgy and over-designed in most games by his visual design, but with the anime art style, it didn't feel out of place at all. This fight is everything a final boss should be. It's truly a shame we are not getting any more from the studio, who put everything they could into Ozma and into Kazan. This looked like it was shaping up to be a really special franchise. If you're obscenely rich and watching this video, get all these guys back together in a room and get them to make another game, because it breaks my heart we won't ever see a sequel or a DLC. Players, and more importantly the team behind this game, deserved a lot better. Realistically though, this is the last thing we're ever going to see out of Kazan, and we could at least be grateful for the art they created, and most of all this boss fight. The best one I've ever played.